And we're going to work through this exercise called playing with scope. So first thing we want to do is download this functions-scope.html to work with. And you'll see in here there's two functions. One's called function A, one is called function B. And then we've got three variables we're working with. X, which is outside of those functions, Y, which is inside of function A, and Z, which is inside of function B. So then there's also a third function called output. And this is going to take one parameter, so we see where it says value there, and it's going to take that parameter and output it as text. So when we take a look at this, let's preview this in the browser. And I'm going to move this over here so that I actually detach our console log here. So it's a separate window that we can have open with our code and have a better view of what's happening in a console and looking at the code at the same time. So now in the console we should be able to type in output and the value x. It should tell us 1. So I say output, and we get nothing. So let's try again. Could be, here we go. So we do have the output, it's just on the other screen here. So I might switch what I just changed here with the console and the window and have it put that at the bottom of our page and scale this down like so. Alright, so that should at least give us a view. So now when we test this again, output x, I was expecting to see something in the console, but I should probably read the function to see we're outputting to the page. So we see x. So now if we try output y, we get an uncaught reference error, y is not defined. And I bet we'll get the same thing with z. Uncaught reference, z is not defined. So these are happening because of the scope of the function. So y and z, when we're trying to pass those parameters to output, they are protected by the scope of function b and function a. So output cannot access them. So if you think about the zoo analogy where we have animals in enclosures, Z is our zebra animal, it's enclosed in B, and then Y could be our penguin, and that's enclosed in A. So they are protected. You cannot access them in the way that we're trying. So when we call these from inside of another function, we can see what happens differently here. So now we're going to edit function A, and we're going to say y is still equal to 2. But now we're going to tell it to call the output function that's outside of this, and we're also going to tell this one to run output z. So save, reload. Now if I input A, I'm going to get a value of 2. I'm going to try B. I'm going to get a value of 3. So now, what happens? Let's just see. What if I run output Z again? I still get that uncaught reference error. So let's continue working through it. So we see the output values of z and y because we've added a function to output those values every time function A is called and every time function B is called. So they're in the same scope now. They can be output onto the page. So now if we update our code, so function A is going to say let y equals 2. Well, we're going to try output x. And on function B, we're going to say output x as well. Let's save, reload. Now if we try A, we get a value of 1. So even though we've said declare y of 2, z of 3, we're not actually asking for those values. So we're asking for something that's outside of the scope of the A and B function. So these work because even though the scope, even though the output calls are not the same scope as x, x is global because it's outside of all those other functions. So the last thing we can do is test out final change here, where instead of output x, we'll try z, and on function b, we're going to change output to y, save, reload, try a, and we get an uncaught exception error. Y is not defined, z is not defined. So it's going to return that reference error because the output is protected by the scope of those functions.